All right, so we're going to talk about the tell me about yourself question today. This is obviously one of the most common interview questions. This is just a common question that you have with any networking event. And the tell me about yourself question is obviously incredibly important because it gets the entire relationship started with this individual, and they're going to know you forever as the person who said whatever you said in your tell me about yourself question. Maybe not overtly, maybe they won't remember every single detail, but they'll remember it by feeling, they'll remember it by sense, and it'll be a part of your relationship with them. So figuring out how to answer the tell me about yourself question is important. Now we're going to talk a lot about what the tell me about yourself question isn't. For example, the tell me about yourself question is not a resume run through. The tell me about yourself question is also not really an elevator pitch. The tell me about yourself question, more than anything, is a branding moment. This is the moment where you define your relationship with the person across the table, be they an interviewer or just a networking conversation. This is a crucial question to practice and to get right. So let's think about what they're asking for, what they really want to know when they ask the tell me about yourself question. The first is, honestly, they don't really have a playbook. Unless it's a very developed company, Fortune 500, and maybe it's the head of HR, they don't really have a set of questions necessarily, maybe some guidance, but this is a great place for them if they don't know exactly where they're going to go with this conversation to get started. So if someone says, tell me about yourself, what is our job? Our job is to make it fun and easy for them. Our job is to make it wonderful for them to have asked that question and beneficial for them to get what they were looking for. The next thing they're looking to know, of course, is who are you, right? They want to know a little about yourself. But more than just like, oh, I'm a dad of two and I like to play soccer on the weekends, they want to know what brought you here today. Why does your work history, why does your backstory matter? What brought you here today? And lastly, this is sort of their first, finger to the wind way of saying, are you a fit? Do you have sort of the qualifications, the qualities, the basic necessities for me to understand whether or not you're going to be a fit? Now, of course, after this question, we've got another 30 or 60 minutes worth of interviews and multiple panels and things like that. But this question defines a lot of what we have moving forward. So these are the 5 things we're going to cover today. It's your first impression, so you've got to own it. You want to keep it brief. This is not a place to overshare. This is not a place to dive into details. Keep it brief and cursory and overarching and exciting. This is not a resume run through. We're going to talk a bit about that. Don't share your entire work history. You want to make it relevant, right? Relevancy was the point of what we talked about almost all this week. You always want to be relevant. And if communication is with the listener, every listener is going to want to be communicated to in a different way. So make it relevant. And lastly, we're authentic and we're credible. Show passion. Show me that you care. Show me that you're interested in what we're talking about here today. So it's your first impression. Own it. This is a graph that I created, so it is proprietary. As you can see, tons of data went into this, but basically it tells the following story. If you have a strong tell me about yourself answer, then automatically you start up. And as the relationship develops throughout the interview, you can oscillate. Maybe some of your answers after that are pretty weak. Maybe you have some good ones, maybe you have some bad ones, but it's pretty tough to drop below a positive moment. Whereas if you start down and your tell me about yourself answer runs on for a long time, I decide right away that you're boring, I make a few judgments that might be unfair, but nevertheless, there they are. I made those judgments. You're going to have an amazing rest of your interview, but it's going to be tough to recover. Whoa, something happened here. Sorry about that. Let's get back into there. Sherry, you still see my screen? Yes? All right, great. Not sure what happened there. So it's going to be tough to recover. And so you've got to make sure you tell me about yourself as your first impression, you own it, and you do an amazing job with it because it's going to define, fair or not, it will define the rest of the conversation. We're hiring right now at Riveter. I interviewed 2 people the other day. The first one lit up. It was excited, a great story. I'd love to hear from them. The second person said a lot of good stuff throughout the interview, but just from the beginning, I knew something felt a little weird, something felt a little off, the passion was missing. And you could guess how both of those conversations went thereafter. Next, let's talk about keeping it brief, right? If anyone hasn't seen Guardians of the Galaxy, this nice tree fella only has one thing that he says throughout the entire movie: I am Groot. Beautiful, brief introduction. Now, we want to be a little bit more developed than a talking tree, certainly, but still, this is not a place where you're telling your life story. This is not a place where I want to give you the first 5 minutes of the interview to share everything about you. How boring is it when somebody talks at you for 3 or 4 or 5 minutes? How much do I have to work to keep you guys engaged here, right? To keep everything going interesting. This is not a place to share everything about your work history. This is a place to give that cursory overview, that place to share exactly why you're here, keep it brief, and it's a place to really start the relationship off on a good note and show that you're a great communicator. So you want to leave out certain things. You want to leave out a full resume walkthrough, which we'll talk about in a minute. You definitely want to leave out anything negative, right? If this is your branding statement, you don't want to say, oh, and I was laid off, and then it was really hard, and I'm really happy to be here. No, right? This is a place where all is good. I am awesome. You're awesome. Here's my quick story. Let's move it along, right? What questions do you have for me next? This is just a jumping off point. So you want to keep it brief, you want to keep it positive, and you want to keep away from going into too many details. This is your overarching picture. Right here, you're the guy at the mall who's handing out lotion samples in the hallway, right? You're not trying to sell me lotion outside. You're trying to just give me a sample, bring me in, give me a flavor of what's available, and give me more to ask about. So it's not a resume run through. If anybody's seen this pretty not good movie called Dude, Where's My Car? This guy's talking, he's ordering food at a Chinese restaurant, and he just keeps saying, and then, and then, and then, and he keeps adding and saying the next thing and saying the next thing. And it's a pretty atrocious scene, and it's what we want to avoid in this conversation. It's what I see very often, right? It's what I see very, very often, and it's what many of us are prone to do. Tell me about yourself. Okay, sure. So in high school, I was a lifeguard, and then I went to college for business, but I changed to biology because I thought I wanted to be a doctor. And then it turned out I didn't want to be a doctor. And when I graduated, I wasn't sure what to do. So I got a job in marketing, and then I got that job, and then I got that job. And this is not the place for it, right? If someone says, walk me through your resume, that's a little bit different. This is not the place for a full resume run through. This is not the place to talk about every detail. Remember, the interviewer doesn't care about you. Never. The interview cares about whether or not you're a fit for them. Are you a fit culturally? Are you a fit personally? Are you fun to talk to? Are you fit for the role? So share the things that make you a fit for the role, not everything in your past. And I think this is one of the biggest mistakes people make, and it can crush any chances moving forward. Next, relevancy, right? We've talked about relevancy all of this week. How do you make this relevant? How do you tell me about yourself story in a minute and a half time, maybe 2 minutes max? How do you tell that in a way that is relevant? Well, if you're applying for an accounting role, share with me things that would make you a great accountant. Share with me things like, I always loved math and I was fascinated by data. What really got me into accounting is a data science course I took in college, and that launched my career. And then ever since, I've been a passionate accountant, and this is just the job I'm looking for. Now, if you come at me and say, let's say you're interviewing at a startup. I know some people here are trying to break into startups. Let's say you're interviewing at a startup, and you're telling me about yourself story and say, oh, well, my first job was at Procter & Gamble, and then I've spent the last 20 years at Walmart. I'm thinking, wow, pretty impressive. P&G and Walmart, but they know nothing about a startup, right? Automatic disqualification, not relevant. But if that's your background and you are there to break into a startup, make it relevant. Yeah, so I started at Procter & Gamble, but it wasn't quite for me. I moved to Walmart, giant company, but I was always seeking out small teams. And I loved small teams at Walmart, and I actually worked at Walmart Labs, so I worked with a lot of technology, and loving that kind of small team nature made me want to go into startups. And that's why I'm here, right? Make sure you're making it relevant. Make sure you give the interviewer a reason to love you, to dig deeper, to be interested by your background, and not to automatically find objections and be like, this person, they don't know me, they don't know my role, they don't know my company, they don't know my culture. Make it relevant. And lastly, we want to show some passion here, right? This goes back to the very, very first slide, which is this is a place where you're going to build your relationship with this individual on the other side of the table with you for a while. So tell me what you love. Tell me what excites you. Tell me what interests you. Tell me why you were born to be a male model like Zarek Zoolander was. Or tell me why you were born to be a manager or a seller or a marketer or a Documentation specialist, which somebody here has a very niche job that I want to learn a lot more about. I've been watching your videos. You're awesome. Like, what is it that makes you so passionate about this? Because that's what I'm looking for, right? I'll dive into that later. Maybe I'll ask you deeper questions about what excites you. What do you love to do? What's the best day at work? But show me that passion. Give me something to bite into. Make me happy that I'm here spending my next 30 or 60 minutes with you, as opposed to doing all the other stuff that I got to do, as opposed to talking to other candidates who are going to make my life and my job easier. Show me a little bit of passion and make it authentic, right? This is not a place to wave your arms around and go crazy. You don't have to be like me. It'd be really weird if you guys were all like me, just like it'd be really weird if I were like all of you. But give me a little taste of what drives you. Give me a little taste of what excites you. Give me a little taste of where your passion lies. And that'll make this a very strong answer. And you'll have to work on it. It's tough to do. It's certainly tough to do over video, right? If you're in front of a person, you can light up, you can smile. Small gestures are great. Very different to do on video. But tell me what you love. Tell me why you love it. Tell me what excites you. Tell me a little bit more about that passion. That is a very important part to this answer.